What would you do if you stepped outside one morning and found that a piece of your land, something you had nurtured, cared for, and loved, had been erased overnight? Not stolen, not damaged, but completely and utterly wiped from existence, as if it had never been there at all. That was exactly what happened to me. The moment I opened my door, I felt it before I even saw it. Something was wrong. The air smelled off, freshly disturbed soil, thick and suffocating, like a graveyard after a burial. My stomach twisted as I took another step forward, and then it hit me. My pond was gone. Not drained. Not dried up. Gone. The land where it had once thrived, where fish had darted between lily pads and dragonflies had danced across the water's surface, had been flattened into an unrecognizable patch of dirt. No sign of moisture, no trace of the vibrant ecosystem it once held, just an empty, compacted scar where something beautiful had been murdered in the night. My breath hitched as I stumbled forward, boots crunching against the loose, uneven earth. My mind raced to find some kind of explanation, some way to make sense of the sheer violation before me. There was none. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't nature reclaiming what was hers. This was intentional. Deliberate. A cold rage settled into my bones. Who had done this? I already knew. From the corner of my eye, I saw him. Chad. Standing at the edge of his driveway, arms crossed, a smug expression barely concealed behind his usual mask of indifference. His gaze met mine without a flicker of hesitation. If anything, he looked satisfied. That's when it clicked. This wasn't an act of God or a freak accident. This was war. I forced myself to breathe, steadying the rage clawing at my chest. Chad wanted me to react. He wanted me to storm over, to shout, to give him the kind of outburst he could twist into making me look unreasonable. Not this time. Instead, I turned sharply and walked back into my house, fists clenched so tightly my nails bit into my palms. I had no intention of arguing with a smug, self-entitled neighbor. I needed proof. My hands moved on autopilot as I grabbed my phone and pulled up my security footage from the night before. My heart pounded as the screen loaded, the time-stamped video revealing exactly what I feared. Bright headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the unmistakable shapes of trucks, workers in reflective vests, and the heavy machinery that had erased my pond while I slept. I dragged the footage back, watching as they methodically dumped load after load of dirt into the water, smoothing it over with precision. This wasn't some half-baked act of vandalism. They hadn't simply tossed a few wheelbarrows of dirt in out of spite. This had been planned. Coordinated. Paid for. My blood ran cold as I searched for Chad in the video. He wasn't on camera, but that hardly mattered. The workers weren't acting alone, and someone had hired them. Chad's arrogance outside all but confirmed his involvement. But as I zoomed in on the details, something else caught my eye, something that changed everything. One of the workers, a man in an orange vest, pulled out a clipboard and showed it to another crew member before nodding toward my property. The second man hesitated, then shook his head before proceeding with the work. A permit. I felt the ground shift beneath me. This wasn't just Chad acting alone. This had been approved by someone with authority. And in this neighborhood, there was only one person who had the power, and the audacity, to back something like this. Karen. I didn't want to believe it at first. I wanted to think Chad had hired an unlicensed crew, that this was all an illegal job done under the cover of night. But as I pulled up county records, my stomach twisted. There it was, an official permit, signed and filed under the Homeowners Association's jurisdiction. And at the bottom, in neat cursive letters, was the signature of none other than Karen Mitchell, HOA president. My vision blurred with rage as I scanned the document. She had signed off on it. She had labeled my pond a community hazard, and claimed it was being removed for neighborhood beautification. But the worst part? The permit stated that I had given my approval. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. She had forged my consent. I felt the anger in my chest shift from a burning wildfire to something sharper, colder, more dangerous. This wasn't just an entitled neighbor throwing a tantrum. This was fraud. This was HOA corruption at its worst. I picked up my phone and dialed Lauren, my lawyer, barely waiting for her to answer before launching into what I had just found. She listened in silence, then let out a slow, measured breath. "This changes everything," she said. "Not only do we have Chad for property destruction, but we can now go after Karen for falsifying documents and overstepping her legal authority." I could hear her scribbling down notes on the other end of the line. "We need every piece of evidence. The footage, the permit, your property records, any communication you've had with either of them regarding the pond." I was already ahead of her, pulling up everything I had. Every complaint email from Chad, every passive-aggressive HOA notice Karen had sent in the past about how my pond was an unregulated body of water. I sent them to her within minutes, my fingers shaking from the adrenaline. Lauren's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "They screwed up, Ethan. Badly. If Karen filed a fraudulent permit, that's HOA abuse. And if Chad acted on that permit under false pretenses, he's looking at serious legal consequences." Good. I had played by the rules. I had ignored their petty complaints, their entitled attitudes, their desperate need to control what wasn't theirs. But this wasn't about neighborhood aesthetics anymore. This was personal. This was war. Karen had thought she could manipulate the system to get what she wanted. She had no idea what was coming. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the security footage replaying over and over, the headlights slicing through the dark, the machinery devouring my pond, the smug look on Chad's face, and the unmistakable name on that permit. Karen. She had orchestrated this. Not just approved it, but manipulated legal documents, twisted the system, and forged my consent as if my land belonged to her. By morning, I had gathered every scrap of evidence Lauren had asked for. Emails, security footage, property records, it was all neatly compiled and sent to her. The lawsuit was already in motion, but Karen wouldn't go down quietly. And I found out just how far she was willing to go when I stepped outside that day and saw my neighbors whispering. Not just whispering, watching me. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But then I noticed the shift, the cold glances, the barely disguised looks of disapproval. Something had changed overnight. That's when a man I barely knew, one of those neighbors who always nodded politely in passing, muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Can't believe you're suing over something that was helping the community." I turned sharply, but he was already walking away. What the hell was that supposed to mean? Then I saw it. A folded piece of paper taped to my mailbox. I ripped it off and unfolded it, my eyes scanning the words. HOA Community Announcement. Dear residents. We regret to inform you that one of our neighbors, Mr. Ethan Carter, has chosen to pursue legal action against the HOA and a fellow homeowner regarding the removal of an unregulated, hazardous water source from his property. This body of water posed safety concerns, attracted wildlife, and negatively impacted property values in our beautiful neighborhood. The HOA acted in accordance with our community's best interests, ensuring the safety and appeal of our homes. Mr. Carter is now seeking financial damages for a structure that was not legally compliant. We understand that legal battles affect everyone in the community, and we encourage residents to stand together in support of neighborhood integrity. If you would like to voice your concerns, please sign the petition available at the HOA office. Sincerely, Karen Mitchell, HOA President. I stared at the paper, my hands tightening around it. That lying, manipulative. A petition? She was trying to turn the neighborhood against me. I could already see the damage it was doing. Neighbors I had never had a problem with were suddenly suspicious, distant. Some of them, I assumed, didn't even know the full story. Karen had framed it perfectly. Instead of admitting she had forged documents and illegally authorized my pawn's destruction, she had twisted the narrative, making me the bad guy, making it seem like I was attacking the community instead of fighting for my rights. I stormed back inside, my pulse pounding. I wasn't just dealing with Chad anymore. I was dealing with someone who knew how to manipulate public perception, how to weaponize bureaucracy and social pressure. And the worst part? I knew how easily people bought into it. Within hours, Karen's petition gained traction. Some neighbors, eager to avoid conflict, signed it blindly. Others, the ones who had always sucked up to her HOA rulebook, probably didn't even need convincing. But the ones who knew better, the ones who saw through her lies, started reaching out to me. A text from an unknown number, saw the footage. This is insane. Let me know how I can help. An email from a neighbor I barely spoke to, Karen's been pulling this kind of stunt for years. If you need someone to back you up, count me in. And then, a single message that changed everything. From, former HOA member @gmail.com. You don't know me, but I used to be on the HOA board. Karen does this all the time. She plays favorites, bends the rules, and shuts down anyone who questions her. I have emails from past meetings proving she pushed for your pawn's removal before Chad even complained. If you want real evidence, I can help. I read the message twice, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from sheer determination. She wasn't just corrupt, she had been planning this from the start. Karen had assumed I would back down under the weight of social pressure, that I would let her rewrite the truth to protect herself. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I picked up my phone and called Lauren. I think we just found the smoking gun. Lauren didn't even hesitate. Forward everything to me. If this former HOA member has proof that Karen has been scheming to get rid of your pawn long before Chad made his first complaint, it destroys her entire defense. And if she's been abusing her position for years, this could be even bigger than just your case. I sent the email immediately, my pulse hammering as I imagined Karen scrambling to contain the damage. She had built her power in this neighborhood on a foundation of intimidation and manipulation, and now, for the first time, it was cracking beneath her feet. But Karen wasn't the type to go down quietly. Less than 24 hours after I received the whistleblower's email, I woke up to find an official notice tacked onto my front door. My stomach dropped as I tore it off, scanning the bold-lettered heading. Notice of property violation, pending city review. I read it twice, then a third time, my disbelief morphing into fury. Karen had gone nuclear. The notice claimed that my property was in violation of zoning laws, stating that my land had been improperly maintained and required re-evaluation for potential community use. It suggested that my pawn's restoration would be subject to further HOA and city approval, as if I needed anyone's permission to rebuild something that had been illegally destroyed, I clenched my jaw, my fists tightening around the paper. She wasn't just trying to control what I could do on my own land. She was trying to take it, Karen had gone beyond petty fines and fabricated HOA rules, she had weaponized the city against me. I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what this meant. If she managed to push this through, she could legally force my land to be rezoned, claiming it as a community improvement project. That would give the HOA the power to block my restoration indefinitely, or worse, seize my property outright. I stormed inside and called Lauren. She picked up on the second ring. "Tell me you're seeing this," I said, my voice tight with barely contained rage. "I saw it," she confirmed, her voice dangerously calm. "And it's exactly what I was afraid of. Karen's playing dirty. She must have used her connections to push this through the city office fast. But this is a bluff, she knows the lawsuit is closing in on her, and she's throwing everything she has at you before she loses control." I exhaled sharply. Can she actually pull this off? Lauren hesitated. If she convinces enough people that your pond restoration is a public concern, the city might stall your project while they review the zoning issue. And if she drags this out long enough, she could try to claim the land under HOA jurisdiction. I gritted my teeth. She's trying to bury me in paperwork and legal delays. Exactly. She's hoping you'll get frustrated and give up before she's held accountable for what she did. I sat down heavily, running a hand through my hair. Karen had spent years playing this game, bending the system to suit her needs. She was good at it, but what she didn't realize was that I wasn't just fighting for the pond anymore. I was fighting to make sure she never did this to anyone else again. Lauren's voice pulled me back. I'll file an emergency appeal to block the city from enforcing the notice, but we need to do more than just play defense. We need to prove that Karen has a pattern of abusing her position. The whistleblower. The emails. The proof was already there. I nodded, determination hardening inside me. Send me everything you need from me. I'll start reaching out to anyone else she's screwed over. It didn't take long. The moment I started looking, the stories poured in. An elderly couple whose fence had been forcibly removed because Karen didn't like the color. A single mother who had been hit with hundreds of dollars in fines for keeping a small vegetable garden in her backyard. A veteran who had been threatened with legal action because he parked his truck in his own driveway instead of in his garage. It was all the same pattern. Karen used her HOA power to control, punish, and harass anyone who didn't fall in line. And now, for the first time, she was the one being exposed. Lauren filed the appeal within hours, slamming Karen with a formal cease and desist notice that legally prevented her from interfering with my land while the lawsuit was pending. The city, suddenly aware that this case was about to become a massive legal battle, quickly backed off, placing Karen's zoning complaint under review rather than fast-tracking it as she had planned. By the time word got out that Karen had falsified documents, her carefully crafted image as the respectable HOA president was shattered. Neighbors who had once blindly followed her started questioning everything, the petition she had proudly circulated. People started asking if they had been manipulated into signing it. Karen, who had spent years making people afraid of crossing her, was suddenly the one losing control. She had played the game for a long time. But this time? She had bet everything and lost. Karen's downfall wasn't swift, it was a slow, crushing weight that she tried to fight against, but there was nothing left to hold on to. The lawsuit moved forward, the evidence against her stacking up like a wall she couldn't climb. Chad, desperate to avoid further financial ruin, took a deal, agreeing to pay for the full restoration of the pond in exchange for dropping any additional claims against him. But Karen? She didn't get the luxury of an easy way out. The forged permit, the harassment, the abuse of power, it all came crashing down on her. The HOA board had no choice but to force her out, and once the city caught wind of how she had weaponized zoning laws for personal revenge, they launched a formal investigation into her past dealings. By the time the legal battle ended, Karen had lost everything. The HOA, the influence, the power, gone. The same neighbors who had once followed her blindly now saw her for what she was, a manipulative fraud who had only ever looked out for herself. With fines piling up and legal fees draining her, she had no choice but to sell her house and leave the neighborhood in disgrace. No farewell, no final words, just a moving truck quietly taking away the last pieces of her failed attempt at control. And as for the pond? It came back. Slowly, carefully, and at Chad's expense. Trucks arrived to clear out the dirt, specialists were brought in to restore the ecosystem, and day by day, what had been stolen from me was returned. I watched as the water filled the space again, as the soil settled, as the first dragonflies returned to dance over the surface. It wasn't just a pond. It was proof. Proof that entitled people like Karen and Chad didn't get to rewrite the rules. that no matter how much power they thought they had, they weren't untouchable. The neighborhood moved on. Chad's house sold to a quiet couple who wanted nothing to do with HOA politics. The petition Karen had circulated became an embarrassing memory, a reminder of how quickly people could be manipulated. And me? I finally had my peace back. But more importantly, I knew I hadn't just fought for myself. My case set a precedent, a warning to every HOA and every overreaching neighbor who thought they could get away with taking what wasn't theirs. So now I ask you, have you ever felt powerless against HOA rules or entitled neighbors like Karen? Share your experiences below, let's see who had it worse.